Ready when you are. Time! Nice work, guys.
Hey guys, welcome back for another episode of The Suited Shootist. As with a lot of these lately, today's video is coming off of a conversation I was having in one of my Facebook groups. And I thought that I would share the thoughts and the experience and all that because I really think that it's relevant. The original poster was soliciting some feedback because they were trying to map out what their training progression was going to be. And given the fact that the focus of this particular group was primarily technical shooting, as you would imagine, a lot of the recommended courses fell very much in line with that theme. And to be sure, technical shooting is important because you need to have a mastery of your gun handling at a subconscious level so that that's not the bit that you're having to think about when you are trying to problem solve with a gun in your hand. But here's the thing. I am of the opinion that I feel that technical shooting is overemphasized to the detriment of other relevant skill sets. And it's because it is the easiest to measure and it's the easiest, arguably, to improve on. So because of that, it's easy to get roped in, as you get that positive feedback loop. And because of that, I think it's important to kind of delve into this. And, we're all products of our own experience. I'm no different. And I think it's worthwhile for me to share the experiences that have made me such a staunch proponent of scenario-based training and force-on-force as early on in your training progression as possible. To give you some, without going into the full backstory, 2009 is when I took my first pistol class. That was Tactical Response Fighting Pistol. From then forward, until about 2016, I didn't really have any formal instruction per se. I was going to the range with friends of mine that were cops or military and stuff like that. Very much sort of the standard beginner cycle of someone who knows a little bit more than me, but not really a useful coach, and turning money into noise and smoke more than anything else. 2016, I took Mag 40, which definitely diving into the deep end and a completely different skill set. If you're going to take Masada Ayub's class, Mag 20, the classroom lecture portion, I think is definitely worthwhile. And then the year after, in 2017, is when I signed up for ShivWorks Extreme Close Quarters Concepts. And if you've been in the space for any period of time, you're familiar with the fact that that's kind of the gold standard of scenario-based training for a few reasons. And that's kind of what I want to touch on, because my experience there was not unique. You hear Craig talk about the class on any interview he's ever done, and it's very common for it to be a transformational experience for the people that attend. He likes to call it an emotional bookmark, and it definitely was. So the reason why I think it's so critical for people to get exposed to good scenario-based training relatively early in their progression is because the shooting problems presented in ECQC were not particularly challenging, So that's something that I think is worth addressing for a few reasons. Number one, just sort of, keeping realism front of mind, that we always want to strive to hone and refine our skills. But in the same vein, especially for people that are new and coming in, we don't want to make the standard so insurmountably high that they feel like they're at such a deficit that they're destined to fail. But the other part of it is this. It wasn't my shooting skills or lack thereof that failed me at ECQC. despite having taken a couple of years each of several different martial arts that marketed themselves as being defense oriented, none of it did me a lick of good. And it's because none of it was ever pressure testing. It was all always against a compliant training partner. And, I walked away from that class going, holy shit, I really need to learn how to fight. And I think that's an important thing to focus on. If the primary purpose for your firearms is self-preservation, defense of yourself and others, the fighting piece of it is pretty critical, because there were moments in that class where I was so overwhelmed that I literally did not know what to do. I mean, there were a couple of moments of genuine unbridled panic. And in those moments, I didn't even think to do, some of the most sort of primal animalistic things. I didn't attempt to strike. I didn't attempt to do any of these things that I had ostensibly trained previously. Literally all my brain knew to do was start tapping frantically to make it stop. Not a proud moment, but, was definitely a wake-up call. That's what got me into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Now, again, there's always going to be debate over the ideal fighting style or combination of fighting styles. And again, I think Craig does a very good job of articulating what components of which combat sports he has seen be most effective. So go watch those videos if you're interested in the minutia of that. But it was interesting because earlier this week I put a post up on the Facebook page, and the question was like, are you training to be good at shooting, or are you training to be good at violence? And I think that that's a relevant question to ask, because being good at one doesn't necessarily mean you're good at the other, and that goes both ways. So you need to be competently proficient at shooting, but you also need to be competently proficient at fighting. And there was some semantic quibbling, obviously. It's the internet, what you're gonna do. And there was a little bit of sort of righteous indignation, I guess, because there are people that are put off by the idea of violence. But the reality of it is a lot of that shame, a lot of that sort of distasteful response is the fact that we've been culturally indoctrinated to believe that violence is a bad thing. It's not. It is completely amoral. It is, physically imposing your will on another person. That's my definition of it, at least. Now, the motivation of it, the motivation behind it, rather, can very much be moral or immoral, righteous or not. But getting comfortable and capable, I think, is very important, because even if you are shooting at a high technical level, if you've never been exposed to another person trying to physically impose their will on you before, it is a surprisingly overwhelming experience. And regardless of how, myelinated the skill is, how much automaticity you have, whatever, the preferred buzzword is, regardless of your ownership of the skill, if your brain is so, is at capacity simply trying to process what's happening that you can't even access that particular file, it doesn't fucking matter. And so in both camps, I really try and avoid the Timmy versus gamer thing, because for the most part it's really unproductive. But in both camps there is some smug elitism that exists. It's the case anytime you're talking about tribe versus tribe. And at the end of the day, when you have put in a certain amount of work and a certain discipline to achieve a certain level of competency, then you want that to be recognized, and you want that to mean something. So, ergo, the people that haven't done it you're better than them. Not saying that's the case, but that's generally kind of what plays into the mindset. But it's worth having a foot in both camps. And, it's one of those things I personally, and I've said this before, I'm shooting at blue belt level proficiency at everything. So I'm almost there. Fingers crossed. I should have my blue belt in March. All things, if all things go well. So, blue belt level combatives, B class level shooting proficiencies. I really need to actually see what my bench and my deadlift and my squat are to get a sense of where those need to improve, because God knows they need to improve. But that's the idea, is having a rock solid foundation across the disciplines, because one of them being so overdeveloped is not necessarily going to compensate for one being underdeveloped. And like I said, it was a very sobering moment that I experienced. And I think everybody would benefit from a few of those. So I want to hear what you guys think, because sometimes this can be a very tenuous topic, and it tends to make a lot of people either defensive or combative for various reasons. But again, I'm really just trying to put out my perspective and share what my experiences were, because with no guidance, it is very easy to get very heavily weighted on one side or the other. And I don't think that does anybody any favors. So what do you guys think? I want to hear about it down in the comments. Other than that, hope everybody has a fantastic week. Stay dangerous. Stay sharp.